And with me here today is
Brian Ashmead-Siers. Hello, I'm a co-founder of Trans in the City.
Hello. So we're here today to talk about a really personal subject to me, and I think just to lay it right on the right from the start, that I think we need to say that there are going to be numerous trigger warnings throughout this, because we're talking about IDAHOBIT Day. We're talking about International Day against homophobia, against biphobia, and against transphobia. And with that, there's a lot of triggering things. There's a lot of discussion about hate, about the things that we in the LGBTQ plus community are currently facing. So, shall I introduce IDAHOBIT, I think?
Yeah, do it. And so, but I think you're right. You know, I think there's a lot. Maybe. Can I ask the first question on that? Because it just feels at the moment, certainly the way that our country is going politically, you know, economically, but also in terms of our lived experiences, at the moment there seems to be an awful lot of transphobia. And I just wanted to ask you, Skye, kind of how that is manifesting itself for you, and perhaps like why I wanted to swear then, but I'm sure that's not appropriate for our podcast, but like, you know, why is it now? Why is it just getting worse and worse and worse?
The answer to your question is I think multifaceted, and I think it's a tough time for LGBT people at this moment in time in general. It's a really tough time. But it's in particular a tough time for people who are trans, who are non-binary, and who are gender non-conforming at this moment in time. And I think that's why we're here. You know, that's why you and I both sort of thought this was a good place for us to come and do a Trans in the City podcast about International Day against homophobia, biphobia, and transphobia, because it's getting worse and it's really prevalent at this moment in time. So I have quite unprecedented personal levels of hate and anger and debate that's aimed at me pretty much daily across the across social media, across pretty much anywhere online, and also in the world's media. I'm really and have been a significant focus over the past few years. So, as well as being a director for Trans in the City, in my day job, I'm a police officer, and we in the police, you know, we don't have the best relationship with the LGBTQ plus community. We really don't. So it was really important for me to try to show my colleagues in the police that, you know, that trans people, that LGBTQI plus people, we're just normal people. We're just people. We've got wants, desires. We've got pets that need love. We've got shopping that needs to be done. We're just people. And so I kind of went out and you know, I went out and spoke publicly a few times. And ever since then, my world has really become a roller coaster of nonsense and noise. So I am very visible, and I think I hit a lot of boxes where people have concerns. People are concerned about police. Are we fair? Are we equitable? Are we doing the right thing? Have police joined the job for the right reasons, or have they joined the job for various reasons? So there's these questions that are being asked of the police. And also I'm trans, and there's a lot of conversation about trans people at this moment in time. And I think a lot of that comes from bad actors. Mm-hmm. So I came out, and now I'm currently up to about 2 million hate comments impersonating at me across social media. 2 million hate comments. Oh. That's a conservative estimate from the police. And I've had to have, and every so often will still have, support from colleagues in counter-terrorism police, just because the concern is such that far right groups have a massive interest in this trans taser instructor cop. There's this huge, great big kind of world of noise. And previously, when I first started to experience this hate and this debate and this commentary that would just insult me, people have never met me make up their own decisions about what I'm like as a police, what I'm like in my job, how I treat people, what I do, just based on the fact that I'm trans. And originally it was just online and in the press and in the media. And you know, I went out and police frontline, you know, I teach public order, public safety, teach policing football is my bread and butter. It's what I teach and I'm good at it and I enjoy it. And when I first came out policing football, you'd have the odd comment, but there wasn't any maliciousness there other than football fans being football fans and you know and taking the mickey out of the police and the old Bill who were policing the match. You know, it was banter, it was good natured. But I've had to, over recent months, withdraw from that policing experience, because when you stand on a front line and a segregation line at a football match, and it's a high risk football match, and all of a sudden somebody notices you and the chants start. And when you have thousands of people singing, is it a man or a woman? When you have thousands of people targeting you, it's a really difficult place to be because you can't.
I guess it feels, and I guess in that scenario, in that moment, it feels super unsafe. It feels like, because to a certain extent, when it's online, whilst it's blooming awful and horrible, and people's words and the keyboard warriors of today can be hurtful, you don't necessarily see them. It's not like it's a like a physical attack. Do you know what I mean? It's horrible, but it's very different when it's online. But when you're in person in a stadium with people chanting at you, that's got to properly get to you and be, I would imagine, super scary. I mean, I just can only imagine what you go through.
It is horrifically. It's not a comfortable place to be, and you can feel the bitterness, you can feel the hatred in the air. You can actually, it's the sense that you can feel. And I think that we are reaching a point where there are, as I said, bad actors. There are people who are going out there who are intentionally now targeting trans people, because by targeting trans people across the West, across Europe, across America, across England and Wales and Scotland and Northern Ireland, we being targeted allows people to become more hateful and hurtful in other ways. So if you look at America, where people are spending huge amounts of money to target trans people to allow discrimination to become a lawful activity. You can be discriminatory because of your religious beliefs, because of your belief system, for example. And the attacks on trans people over there have allowed people to start saying, well, I don't want to have anything to do with, I want to be able to discriminate against gay people. I don't believe that gay people can come into my shop.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I'm not going to marry them, for example, if I'm a registrar or what have you.
Can I just say on that, Skye, sorry, really quickly, I was just going to say, this is why it's so important for me, right? This is the bit that is the crux of where we as a community have to stand together, because what you've just said completely and utterly encapsulates my fear as a gay man, right? Because the minute you start going after one part of our community, people that are ill-educated and are, you know, any of the homophobia, biphobia, transphobia, they just go, well, actually Skye's different, so therefore Brian's different. You know what I mean? It's that bit of like, you know, we're not regular, we're not in their world of norm, and that's why I like strongly believe that we can only ever do this together, right? Because the minute one person gets vilified and victimized and, you know, kind of, you know, singled out, we all do. And that's the bit that's really important, that when we stand together, we have to stand quite united, because actually, correct me if I'm wrong, but there are people in our own community that are equally transphobic. that are equally against our trans sisters and brothers and our non-binary sisters and brothers. You know, it's that for me just feels that if we're going to talk about IDAHOBIT Day, we have to do it in a, you know, a community and togetherness. That, you know, there has to be an alliance between all of us, because otherwise it's not worth talking about it.
Yeah, I agree. And, you know, I think having people together is so important, but that's not just the LGBTQI plus community, it's having us all together, because people are being told that to be gay or to be trans is to be feared, you know, that we're predators, that we cause harm, and that we're just out to have these nefarious deeds. We're just cosplaying, we're just people who are just doing this because for whatever reason we want to go and harm other people, and it's ridiculous. But whether you're straight, whether you're gay, whether you're lesbian, whether you're bisexual, whether you're trans, non-binary, gender non-conforming, ultimately we all have the same problems. We all have the fact that our bills are going up and up, the fact that, you know, I'm having to work overtime to just survive, that all of us are having to face these financial difficulties, that we're all having to have this shared experience of a world that's getting harder and harder to be able to live more comfortably. But yet we're being told and we're being divided against each other because, you know, it's a way of keeping us angry at a group. We're being angry at Tottenham, we're angry at Wrexham. It's like the football tribalism. We're being told we must hate these people because, and it keeps us divided, and it keeps us focusing off focusing, I think, from
and bonkers,
the
right?
things that matter.
Totally bonkers, because there are way more important things to be worried about than whether you're LGBTQI or whatever. Do you know what I mean? There's like everything that's going on in the world, the fact that we've got, you know, people that identify as any of those categories is just like, it should just be accepted and loved and cherished. And I mean, I lose words when I speak to anybody that from Trans in the City or any of our trans brothers and sisters. I just think it's horrendous. And when you talk through like your 2 million social media like posts of hate, I just like what. It makes me really angry. I'm like, how? Like, it's just bonkers. I mean, it just beggars belief that we still live in a world where such hate exists.
We are, and this is why days like, and having an awareness of the fact that this hate isn't going away. That, you know, it's 2024. We're living in 2024, right? And we can fly. Okay, it's just broken, but we can fly helicopters on Mars. We can fly helicopters on Mars, and we can do just the most incredible things with technology. But yet, the minute somebody says, "Hi, I want to love this person. Hi, I am this person," it doesn't bother anyone else. It shouldn't matter. But the world, it just seems to lose its mind. And that's really the crux of the matter, is that we're being sort of fed this fear of hate, of this diet of fear, that we must fear these people. We must be worried about these people because they're coming into your bathrooms, they're taking over your sports, they're harming your kids. And it's just absolute nonsense. And we're being spoon-fed this culture of fear because, as I said, it's allowing people to discriminate. It's taking people's mind off absolutely what is the real problems in life. You know, and
totally.
Sorry, go on.
I was going to say, no, I mean, I know you and I spoke before we started this podcast, but kind of my field of reference is different. As a, you know, I'm a 47-year-old gay man. It hugely concerns me that our community is under attack. I just remember growing up in the 90s when, you know, we went through kind of our, you know, dreadful AIDS, you know, epidemic, and losing our members of our community, and the vilification then was horrendous. It, you know, it was awful. I was scared to come out. I was scared to be myself. But there was no social media, and there wasn't that kind of. There was just the press, and the press was awful. I mean, it was on the front page most days, as I'm sure you know. But I thought we'd genuinely got past that, and we'd got past that through policy, through political advocacy for us in terms of equal rights, through education, through people understanding that actually I could be married to a man and love a man, and that was no different to loving and marrying a woman. Do you know what I mean? But for whatever reason, we seem to have taken those wonderful steps forward at the start of 2000s, and then we seem to have taken loads and loads and loads of ridiculous steps back, and such that you have this big polarization whereby we have people now in our community that are fearful for their lives again, and that are fearful to be out again, and that, from a professional perspective as well as a personal perspective, it worries me greatly, because I know from certainly the work that I do in the company that I work for, KPMG, we need people to be themselves. Like, we need to support people. For me, it's not about your gender or your sexuality or your background. It needs to be about you as a person. And my lived experience of this has very much come from Trans in the City, and from meeting people like your wonderful self, and also people like Bobby, who listening to people need to hear your stories. Like, if they hear your stories and hear what you go through and hear kind of the fear and what you've had to overcome, I would, be surprised if anyone doesn't like sympathize with that and can be more supportive. And I just think I want people to listen. I want people to hear. I want people to see what you go through and see that fear that clearly that you live with. It's just, I'm really trying hard not to swear on this podcast, Skye.
I think, and I know exactly. I mean, my day-to-day work is just full of blue around me. So the thing is that there's studies that show that if people can be themselves in the workplace, that they are much more productive.
Mm-hmm.
If people can be themselves without fear, without anger, without hatred, I think it increases a business's profitability by 30%, which is a huge factor, a huge figure. So why can't people be themselves? If somebody commits a crime, well, the police should deal with that as we would with anybody. But, because a man goes out and commits domestic assault, does that mean that all men are domestic assault, abusers? Of course it doesn't.
No.
And when you look at the trans community, we're less than 1%. We're about 0.5% of the population of the last census. So if you look at trans women, we're 0.25% of the population. And when you look at that, we are a tiny percentage, but yet there's this huge, great big focus on us. People forget that non-binary or trans masculine people exist, because it doesn't fit the narrative. Oh, look at his Skye. Skye's this, Skye's that, Skye's this awful great big thing. We must be frightened of Skye, and it's just nonsense. But it's really, really prevalent at this moment. But it's been driven, as I said, by very, very wealthy organisations that are sowing dissent, I believe. And I think we have got much more important things to look at. When you look at statistics, hate crime against LGBT people, it's huge at this moment in time. And as a police officer, I have a lot of contact with our hate crime leads. And you look at hate crime, and it's not just against trans people or gay people. It's the whole of the board. You're looking at hate crime against people of color because of their skin or their religion. It's all rising. And I think just looking at trans people themselves, so between 2023 there was a 65% increase in LGBTQ plus hate crime, and that's Gallup statistics. 65% rise.
Wow.
And the government's own statistics, or the government's own report last year, states that they believe that only 90% at most crime is reported to the police. So that means there's huge amounts of hate crime across the whole strands, but especially against LGBTQIA plus people.
And do you
that's been
think, though, sorry, Skye, do you
unreported.
think when it gets reported that our members of our community report it as an LGBTQI plus crime? I'm not sure that they would. Because I think maybe we are also afraid to say we think we've been victimized or abused or whatever it might be, violence towards because of our sexuality or gender orientation. I think we're more likely to sort of just say it's just a crime. To me, it's like I don't think some people feel they're safe enough to say it's even a LGBTQ plus crime.
And I think you're right, and I think that goes across the board. I think people don't feel safe to report it. They don't feel safe anyway, and there's a huge distrust of police at this moment. And I get it. When you look at the Port inquiry, when you look at the way that those were managed, it doesn't matter that I know that in my area we have got a really good reputation certainly with the gay community, with investigating hate crimes. We've got a really good rapport. We've got dedicated hate crime officers. We've got people who work with the community. It doesn't matter how close we are and what good work we do. If we have officers who do poor investigations, officers who don't do the right thing, or act negligently or worse, and that puts all of the 99% of good work that the police do under a spotlight, and it ruins it. And that sows distrust and dissatisfaction. And I know we're not perfect. We've got a way to go. I absolutely know that. But we need to have a way of being able to, certainly in the UK, of trying to increase that trust and confidence within the police. And that's only by speaking to the police and engaging with us and engaging back with our communities. But I think having initiatives that I think we as an organisation, we as a community, LGBTQIA+, we should be calling on the government to look for things like statutory anonymity, I'll put my teeth in, statutory anonymity for all victims of hate crime, like they do with sexual offences. Because whether you're whether it's a racist hate crime, whether it's religious orientated, whether it's gay, whether it's transphobia, biphobia, if somebody felt that their name wasn't going to get raked and brought up to the attention of people who they don't want to hear, and that they can report it correctly and not have it splashed across the papers, having that statutory anonymity through court process, I think was vital. We do it with lots of other offences. Why can't we do it with this? And I think that would have a massive impact.
And I think there's also a role for people like us, in terms of being, I know it's difficult, right, to stand up and be counted and talk about what we've gone through, but also what you go through on a day-to-day basis. But as a role model and as somebody that, gets through it, and I'm a member of our Trans in the City WhatsApp group. I've never been part of a more supportive group. Oh my goodness, it was absolutely wonderful. And to know that you've got, people on your side and people that have got your back, it's so important. And, for anyone that's listening to this podcast that feels they're on their own or they've got no one to support them, I would just implore them to reach out to us or to other people within our community that are, people that can help and support and just show them something that's more encouraging and positive than the hate. And it's I know it because I experience it through us, and I experience it through my friends as well, that there are people out there that are willing to be supportive. And that, certainly from my perspective, my personal perspective, I get through some of the challenges that I face through the support of my friends and my colleagues and people that just aren't any of the above, aren't homophobic, transphobic, biphobic. They're just people that see me for me. We talked about, didn't we, about how we've both got our respective partners. I've been married for 23 years, and even now, 23 years into marriage, and being with my husband, I would not walk down the street with him. And I said about being high days and holidays, we do it like on Pride events. But in the safety of a Pride event, we were at Birmingham Pride last year, and we were, you know, having a wonderful time. And as we left the Pride events, we went to get a taxi, and we were emblazoned with like rainbow colours and glasses and glitter and looking fabulous. And I was scared. I was really scared walking to the taxi. Same being on holiday, you know, we go to, you know, LGBT safe spaces because we know we can be together and we can be openly together. But that's probably like, I don't know, for a few weeks, a year, whereby we feel completely comfortable. But for the most part, I would not walk around Birmingham or London or any of the big cities hand in hand with my husband, because I just don't feel safe doing so. And I that's me, right? But Skye, I know from your perspective, it's probably heightened even more in terms of safety with you and your partner.
Yeah, it is, and I agree with that. You know, we're having that public affection, having that public display of affection is such a difficult thing, and I know that lots of people will relate to that. But I've got to say that it's a tough time for all of us at this moment in time. It's a massive, massive tough time. But you know what? The one thing I have to hold on to, and you've talked about it, and you're absolutely right, is having friends. It's having allies, and it's being able to reach out. Now, you might not feel comfortable. People might not feel comfortable reaching out to the police. Like, I get that. You know, no matter how many times I can say, I know amazing cops who are just passionate about doing the right thing and giving people the best service that they can. But I get it. I get people might feel reticent about that. But there are places that you can reach out to. There are charities, there are places that people can reach out to for that support. But one thing I have to hold on to is, you're right, there are allies, there are friends of us out there, people who don't care what wrapper you're wearing, people who don't care who you love. And that's what we need to hold on to. The fact is that business sees so much that having a workforce that can be themselves benefits not just the employees, but the whole of the business. The fact is that, you know, since I've come out and I've gone through this just nightmare, and, you know, the police haven't had this best reputation with dealing with trans people, non-binary, gender non-conforming people, and then historically we have an awful reputation for dealing with the way we've dealt with historically with gay people in the past. And you know what, I've come out and we teach a whole region of forces. We get 8,000 cops a year coming through my doors, and they all talk to me. They don't ostracize me. They treat me as a human being. They keep saying, Skye, I've got your back, mate. I've got your back, chick. That they've, you know, there have been so many times where cops have rung me up and said, just to make you aware, we're seeing all sorts of nonsense on Twitter. Do you want me to report it for you? And they do, you know, and it's really good for me to know that people are starting to see and hear. And, you know, that when I do go to the shop, in the main, most people don't bat an eyelid. You know, when I might not be able to hold my partner's hand, but you know what? Most people don't care.
Yeah.
Because most people are kind. Most people have got their own things to deal with. And I think, you know, we've talked a lot about hate, and I know we've got to start winding this up. But I think thinking about IDAHOBIT Day on May the 17th, that having that day where we actually have to be aware that things are tough, but also that there are friends, there are allies, there are organisations out there that have got our back. And you know what? This too will pass. And it will. This too will pass.
And newsflash, by the way, you are a bloody wonderful. I just swore then. Sorry, you're a wonderful human being. That's the bit that you know, when I talk to my friends about having been part of Trans in the City and working with all of you, it's like, oh my goodness, like it's about being kind, and it's about being respectful, and it's about listening, and it's about understanding. But more importantly, I think it's then getting together and having a good time, and like you say, the allyship is really important. And I couldn't care less who somebody is, as long as they're nice and kind. That is the most important for me of anything. But yeah, I just wish more people would kind of take that and listen and hear the stories and empathize, because I agree, May the 17th is a perfect opportunity to reflect, to realize, to remember. Really important. This isn't easy, but then, like you say, just having our community, I've never ever felt more cherished by any other community than the LGBTQ plus community. So if I can reciprocate that back, then that's our job, right? It's playing it forward.
It is, and you're right, and and it's things will get better. I absolutely know it. But we'll only get there. We won't get there with screaming and shouting and huffing and puffing, and we'll get there through kindness. We'll get there through compassion. We'll get there from listening, and we'll get there with engaging and talking to people and getting people to realize that yeah, we're okay. We're just people.
Yeah, exactly. Well, listen, Skye, I have loved talking to you. I'm going to stop the recording now, but we will, yeah, I mean, hopefully people will listen to this podcast and they will learn things, but equally take heed that hopefully things will get better.
Yes, and they will. I know they will. I can feel it.